Mark is the principal at Impact Pricing. He's got a long history in product management and pricing strategy work. He created some of the leading content in the world on pricing strategy that product managers literally tens of thousands of product managers have been certified based on the material and trained based on the material that Mark created. So we're really honored to have you here today, Mark, to walk us through your thoughts on how buyers value products. So welcome, Mark. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks, Jason. It's going to be great, I hope. First, to set expectations, when Jason and I were talking about what we were going to talk about today, he said, I'd like a pricing 201 course, not a pricing 101 course. So today we're going to jump into the meat. It is going to be really about things you've never thought about, or you actually talked a little bit about this in the introduction, but I'm going to give you a concept of how to understand value the way your customers understand value at a very deep level. And we'll give you a tool. We're going to practice the tool. The way today is going to go is I'm going to do the first 10 or 15 minutes and I'm going to go so fast, but it is only about motivating you to say, yes, this is really important. And as soon as I get into the tool, I'm going to slow it down and we're going to go at a decent pace. So then you can go practice this before we leave today. And then we'll take Q&A at the very end. So let me see if I can get my screen shared appropriately. Jason, what are you looking at?
You're live.
Perfect. Okay, so we're going to talk about how buyers value your product today. Who am I? You've got a copy of the slides. You're going to get a copy of the slides, so I do not need to go through this. The things that are probably most interesting to you, I've started companies, I've sold companies. I was an instructor for Pragmatic for several years. In fact, I still am a part-time instructor for them. And a couple of years ago, I went out on my own, again, just to create a new company called Impact Pricing. And all we do at Impact Pricing is teach and advise companies about pricing. So what are some common problems that I see in companies? And I saw these as a pragmatic marketing instructor. I see these in the world of pricing. We don't get paid enough relative to the value that we create. And I'm sure that many of you can relate to that one. We build products or features people don't buy or use. I can tell you that Pragmatic did an annual survey and they found something like 37% of companies confessed that they'd built a product feature that nobody ever used. And I once presented that in a room and somebody raised their hand and said, yeah, and the other 60-some% were lying. So, so it may very well be true, who knows? Our marketing messages aren't resonating with our buyers. We talked a little bit about that in the intro. Salespeople are discounting too much, too often. Boy, don't I hear that constantly. And then we don't know how to price our products. This is the magic. What price should we set? But here's what's fascinating about every single one of these problems, which seems like they're varied across the board. What's fascinating is they're all common in that we don't understand our own value. If we truly understood value the way our customers understood value, then a lot of these problems we could fix, we could address. Let's talk about value for a second. What's the whole point of us being in business? We want customers to buy more stuff from us at higher prices. That makes sense. We want buyers to buy at high prices. Well, how do we do that? Well, if we take a single step backward, a buyer is going to buy from us when they think we're delivering a ton of value to them. The more value we deliver, the higher the price they're going to pay. So it's really about the perception of value that our buyers are getting from our products. Well, how do we get our buyers to perceive more value? Well, it starts if we have salespeople. Are our salespeople able to, on a one-on-one conversation, help buyers understand the value that we can deliver to our products? And then it takes a step back into the world of marketing. As we're doing marketing, are we talking about the value of our products in ways that resonate with our market? Or are we talking about our products? And of course, we're going to go launch a brand new product. As we launch it, are we excited about the product? Or are we excited about the value that it's going to deliver to our market? Because that's what the market cares about. Of course, we're building products as we take another step backwards. So are we building value into our products? Are we building features that are cool? Someone's designing those. Are we thinking about value as we design them? And hey, from my product managers, this is where you come into play. In my view of a product manager's job, the single most important role you have is defining the next product that we're going to go build. Well, how do you define that if you don't understand value? I think of this is really game theory where we look at the very end and we walk our way back and say, well, how do we get to the place where we want to be at the end? If we expect buyers to buy from us at higher prices, we have to define products that buyers value. And so this concept of value is super important to us. I've broken it up into three key categories. We create value, we communicate value, and we capture value. And it's a really easy way to think about this. Are we truly creating, communicating, and capturing value for our marketplace? If you want to increase revenue and profit in your company, you have to create, communicate, and capture more value. To do that, I'm going to introduce to you today a tool called the Stiving value tables. Now, I created this because I was a pragmatic marketing instructor. And as a pragmatic instructor, if you've ever taken a pragmatic class, you know the single most important thing we talk about is market problems. Market problems, market problems, market problems. Do you know the problem you're trying to solve? And yet, as a pricing person, I always cared about the value. What's the dollar value somebody's willing to pay me for my product? I created this so that I could tie market problems to value. And as I've worked with companies on this concept, I've found that it is so powerful. It is such an amazing way for you to think about the value of your product. A, a Stiving value table has 4 columns to it: solution, problem, result, and value. I don't care if you put solution or problem first. Chronologically, the problem probably comes before the solution. As you start to create value tables, though, you're going to find it's easier if you put the solution to the left. So we'll start with the solution on the far left-hand column as we go through this. Now, let me continue to motivate this a little bit before we jump into how to go do this and why it makes sense. First off, value is what drives your messaging, or what should drive your messaging. One of my all-time favorite sayings is nobody cares about your product. Nobody. You could talk about your product all day long and absolutely nobody cares. You know what they care about? They care about the problems that they have that you're going to solve for them. They care about the results that they might be able to achieve. They care about the value they're going to get, but they absolutely do not care about your product. If you're marketing and you go to your webpage and you see you're talking about your product and your product features, guess what? It's not resonating with your marketplace. Value should be driving our market segmentation. There are 2 big reasons that we do market segmentation. One is we want to build impactful products, and 2 is we want to craft messages that truly resonate. If we think about this big orange ball as the world of everybody, it's hard to build a product that goes after everybody. And it's hard to build a message that goes after everybody. On the other hand, we could go after a single person. And for any one person, I could build a product that's perfect for that person, not very cost effective. And I could find a message that resonates with that one person, but again, not practical or cost effective. And what we want to do is we want to find a group of people, a group of buyers who are similar enough that we can build impactful products and yet craft messages that resonate with that market segment. So what is it that's common about that market segment? It turns out we care about what problems is that segment trying to solve, what results are they looking for, and likely how much value do they think they're going to get from our products. And when we use this value table, it gives us the ability to better understand how we should be segmenting our market. Once you've picked a market segment, then you want to do price segmentation. So consider this green ball, the market segment that we chose on the previous slide. Inside that market segment, there are some customers who are willing to pay us a ton. And then there are some customers who aren't willing to pay so much. And then there's a bunch in the middle. Wouldn't it be great if we could find ways to do price segmentation and charge different customers different prices? Absolutely, it would. Well, how do we do that? How do we understand that? It turns out we understand that when we can look at these different types of buyers and know what kind of results they're going to get from our product and know how much value they're going to get from our product. Then we can create strategies and tactics so that different customers pay us different amounts, even inside a market segment. It all comes from understanding results and value. Possibly the hardest thing to do in a company, especially for product manager, product marketing, is figuring out what features should go into which package. If you're building good, better, best packages, which I dearly love, I think it's a brilliant way to go about doing your packaging, especially when we're trying to do pricing and price segmentation. Trying to figure out what feature goes in which package is hard. Do you want to know how to do that? Turns out it's much, much easier once we understand in our features which features do which customers value. And as we start to understand that, it helps us create that good, better, best packaging. Almost feels like this value table is panacea. And of course, it's going to help us figure out what the right pricing model is going to be. Once we understand value, then we can choose, are we going to do a by the unit type pricing method? Are we going to charge for each transaction? Third-party payers, is someone else going to pay for it because they're getting the value from it? Are we going to go in a subscription because we're giving constant value, regular value over and over and over again? When we understand value, it helps us pick that pricing model. And again, it's all about what's the solution we're delivering and how much and how do our customers value that? So a great impactful insight, value should drive almost all of your business decisions. I'd love to stop for questions because I think this is such an important concept, but I want to move on. But please type questions in the sidebar and we'll get to those possibly before we do the exercise or after we do the exercise. But let's jump in now, and I'm going to slow down just a touch so that we can talk about what is a Stiving value table. How do we do this? When I create these for my clients or for myself even, I start out with writing 4 columns in an Excel spreadsheet. And in the left-hand side, I write the solutions. And then I'm going to say, okay, now what kind of problems would we have? Or am I trying to solve? And sometimes we're going to find that we get more than one problem for each solution. We're going to get to the result. If I can solve that problem, what result would a customer expect to get? And then if a customer gets that result, how much value do they get out of achieving that result? Let's go through each one of these a little bit slower. I'm going to give you an example in my world. I'll give you the example in just a second. So let's do the solution. I recommend you start with the solution. It makes the value table a little bit cleaner. And by the way, you probably think in terms of your product. Think of the solution. It could be the product as a whole. What is your overall product doing? And it could also be individual features. If you think about each individual feature that you put into your product, why'd you put it in there? And if you look at your web page, what are the features you're talking about? I call those marketable product features. If it's worth your marketing team or your sales team talking about a specific feature, it's worth putting into a value table. And the reason for that is we talk about it because we think it's important to our marketplace. So let's find out. Let's put it in the value table in the solution column. In my ideal world, you're going to fill this out with all of your features. However, in the beginning, just do a few. Put what you think are the most important features, the high-level product, and run through the value table, experience this. You're going to find it's not trivial, but boy, is it useful and valuable to you. Now, I mentioned I would give you my own example. So recently I was asked, could I teach Stiving value tables to salespeople? And I said, well, why don't I create a value table for salespeople? And here's one row we're going to go through. So what's the example? What's the product? The product is going to be teaching Stiving value tables to sales teams. That's it. So I've got a solution, and the solution is going to be Stiving value tables and sales teams. So let's go to the next piece. What problem does it solve? When you're doing a problem, when you're writing a problem, I recommend you put these in first-person format. You want to make sure you include some kind of pain, some kind of emotional, ooh, I really don't like that. And then think about it so that you can write it at a level that's truly going to resonate with your buyers. When you start thinking about different types of problems, you've probably heard the old, people don't want to buy a drill, they want to buy a hole. Well, it turns out people don't want to buy a hole. What they really want to buy is the ability to hang a picture on the living room wall. Well, what they really don't want to buy a picture to hang on the wall. They really want to buy a room that looks nice when company comes over. There are many different levels that you can go to when you start thinking about why are people buying your product? What's the problem you're trying to solve? You want to choose a level that resonates with your market, that resonates with your buyers. And for any given solution, any given feature, there could be more than one problem that you're solving. Go ahead and create more rows in your value table, one row for each problem, and just write the same solution off to the left as you build it. Back to the example then. The problem, my salespeople have their product pitch down, but it doesn't resonate with our buyers. This results in losing too many deals. Now it's in first person because I'm talking about my salespeople. This is obviously going to a sales director or sales VP. There's pain. We're losing too many deals. I've chosen a level that resonates with a buyer. We're losing deals. Salespeople aren't winning the deals they need to win. And of course, there could be more than one, but I didn't list them here. I'm just going to do the one for our example. So that's the problem. Now let's go into what's the result. When we think about a result, the result is just if I use your solution to solve this problem, what result could I expect? I highly recommend you make it quantitative. Try super, super hard. Whatever it takes, find a way to measure this, find a way to put a number on it. Now, I get it, different customers, different buyers are going to get different results. Put in a typical result. Put in a result that you think that a buyer might get, should get. This is truly a way of thinking about our product, much more so than saying this is exactly the result that every single buyer is going to get. When we say make it measurable, some examples might be what percent improvement are you going to get in something? How many hours are you going to save? How much is sales going to increase? How much is risk going to decrease? There are numbers that we can put in all these things. Let's jump back to the example that I gave you then. The result, salespeople are going to stop leading with features, and instead they'll talk about problems, results, and value. That should lead to maybe 2% higher average selling price, maybe 5% higher win rates. Those are real results that resonate with directors of sales, VPs of sales. So you can see that the result part is really important, and having the number you're going to see is crucial when we jump to the next piece. Because the next piece is value. How much value does a company get if they could have this result? Well, it turns out with value, we're going to try to turn this into dollars. This is possible in almost every situation if you're in a B2B marketplace. If you're in a B2C marketplace, it's not so possible, but we'll talk about what to do in the Q&A part after the exercise. But for now, just assume that we're all in a B2B space. And here you're going to use your business acumen. You're going to take whatever that result number was and say, how would that manifest itself in dollars, in profit dollars to my customer? Really typical, you're going to see things like increased revenue and decreased costs. Those are the types of things we're looking for, but we're going to use business acumen. Well, let's go back to our example. I'm going to assume that my company, the customer that I'm going to have, is $100 million in revenue, and they have a 50% contribution margin. If you don't know what contribution margin is, think of it as gross margin without fixed costs or overhead bundled into the cost structure. So we've got a 50% contribution margin. So what's the dollar value to this company of getting those results we talked about on the previous slide? The dollar value, 2% higher ASP. Well, I'm going to get 2% of $100 million, which is that revenue. And it doesn't really change my costs at all. So 2% of $100 million is $2 million. What about the 5% higher win rate? Well, if I get a 5% higher win rate, it's 5% of $100 million. So I'm getting an extra 5 million, but this is only revenue. It's not profit. Since my contribution margin is 50%, I get half of that in contribution dollars or profit dollars. So that comes out to $2.5 million. I can now say, look, if you have a $100 million company, 50% contribution margin, 2% improvement in ASP, and 5% improvement in win rate, you're going to get an extra $4.5 million. That's powerful. Now, I'm not saying a company would pay me $4.5 million to come teach their salespeople, but boy, would they pay me 100,000, 400,000? They'd pay a lot if they thought I was the only one who could deliver that solution. So the power of a Stiving value table is understanding where is the value, what's going to resonate with our buyers each step of the way. When I go talk to a client, if I go talk to a customer, the last thing I'm going to do is say, hey, I'm going to teach Stiving value tables to your salespeople. I might lead with something like, hey, do your salespeople talk about your product all the time? When you know they should be communicating value by talking about problems and results that clients should get. Right? That's a problem that resonates with people. And I didn't even talk about my solution. What if the result could be something like 2% higher ASP and 5% higher win rates? Would that resonate with you? Oh my gosh, yes. Well, how did you do that? Well, guess what? I'm going to do that by teaching this concept called a Stiving value table. The Stiving value table is just the product. It's the how do you do it? It's not the lead. It's not the value. It's the delivery mechanism for the value. All right. Let me see my timing. Oh, 23 minutes after. We got to do an exercise, but I'm going to see if there's any questions in the Q&A. I got to find the Q&A someplace. Jason, help me out.
You've got a chat. Look at the chat button at the bottom of your screen.
Yeah, because of the way I've got this set up, I don't see a chat button here. Damn it.
Okay. There's a good question from Blake in here that I'll just read out to you. Actually, Blake was looking for examples or thoughts around being able to quantify risk in a way that resonated with the prospect in general. And Blake, you might want to clarify that question a little bit if you want to, but Blake's working with a product where risk is somewhat difficult to quantify from a precise value perspective.
Yeah. Can we save that one for after the exercise? And I only say that because it isn't relevant to the exercise. And so we can go in 100 different directions once we've gotten through the basic concept that says, how do we think through the solution, problem, result, and value?
Yeah.
So Blake, I'm happy to answer that, but let's do it after we do the exercise.
And then Mark asked a kind of a related question around putting a price on value where there's no intrinsic dollar amount. How can you prove out the value with a new product without any actual proof points, actual users versus test results? So I think that might be kind of in the same vein.
Although that is the exercise I'm going to have you do, there's no proof points, right? I'm going to show you, you're going to go create one that has no proof points, no extra data, but it has to do with business acumen. There's another concept altogether that we're not talking about today, but it's called a value conversation. How could you as a product manager, or how could your salespeople as a sales team go out to a client and actually get this type of information from them just by asking them questions? And it's not as hard as you imagine. People don't necessarily know the answers to the value, but they can guess and they can work through it with you. And in fact, even after you've created a value table like this, my strong recommendation is you never, ever go present this to a customer. You use it as the roadmap to go have value conversations with customers so they can give you their own numbers. When they give you the numbers, they believe it. When you give them the numbers, they don't. So, okay, excellent. Let's jump into a quick exercise, see if you guys can get through this, and then come back and we'll address anything you want in terms of value tables or even in terms of pricing. So I invented a brand new product. I call it Beam It Over, Scotty. Now, you guys have all seen Star Trek. You know the transporter, but this isn't quite as cool. We can't do people. We can only do packages. You need both the sender box and a receiver box. It doesn't just beam anywhere. It transmits packages up to 1 foot by 1 foot by 1 foot. We can send it up to 500 miles, which is awesome. We're hoping to get farther, but right now it's 500 miles. And it only takes 2.3 seconds to transmit a package. This is an awesome product, don't you think? This is absolutely incredible. Doesn't exist, by the way. There's no proof points for it, but your job is going to be to create for me a row in a Stiving value table. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to use the whole product itself as the solution. We don't need a specific feature today. We're just going to say, what's the product? And what I want you to do, this is going to be much easier when you start by choosing a specific use case. Don't spend too much time. Pick a customer, pick a use case, say, this is the problem that they really have that we're going to go solve. What's the quantitative result you think you're going to get they're going to get when you solve this problem for them? And then can you put a dollar value on it? How would you calculate it? Any questions? This is going to be so much fun.
All right.
Can you please show the slide before?
Say that again.
Can you please show the slide before, the previous slide?
This one?
Thank you.
Yep.
And also, I've dropped the link to these slides in the product coffee notes, and these are slide numbers 19 and 20 here at the end. Just so you've got a reference point if anybody wants to pull those up while you're in your group.
And don't worry, the answers aren't in the slides. Okay. What do you say we take 20 minutes to do this? Is that okay with you, Jason?
Yep, that should be great. I am going to break people up into rooms. If you have to leave before the end of the session, please remember to fill out the survey. And the session will be on the YouTube channel probably tomorrow. And we will see you back here in about 20 minutes. Thanks, everybody. I'm going to hit your breakout rooms now. Take it away, Mark. It's all yours.
All right. Who wants to share what you guys learned, what you did? We need to be relatively fast if we can.
I'll go first because I'm going to have to jump in a couple of minutes. So the first thing that we identified was that the speed to delivery was the key value, and that we saw the competitors, not so much like the Amazons, but possibly like a FedEx or a USPS or UPS. One of the examples we came up with would be like auto parts or small machine parts. So as an example, being able to get a part immediately as opposed to keeping the car in the shop for a couple of days or more, which also would reduce any type of customer friction you'd have. So the way that we would kind of put a dollar value to the overall value would be that you'd be able to fix more cars in a given day, and also the loss of customers. So we assumed if you're, as an example, if you average, say, $1,000 per repair and you're doing 3 cars a day times 5 days a week, that's only 15 cars. But let's say with this, you're able to increase that to take on another 2 cars per day to get fixed. That would increase your revenue from 15,000 to 25,000.
Yep.
And then also the customer retention. So we made an assumption of, let's say, if a car is in the shop for at least 2 days or more, then you lose 1 out of every 4 customers. So for every customers you have, let's say a given customer was, we estimated, say, $3,000 a year in repairs. Then if you lose if you lose 1 out of every 4 customers, that's an additional 18,750 that you'd be losing. So adding that back in.
Yeah. Okay. So what I want to do, Mark, is I'm going to redo yours real fast if I can.
Sure.
And the reason I want to redo it is because I want to explicitly state the problem, the result. And I think you guys did a really nice job with the value. So we don't need to go there. But if you think about the problem for a second, the problem we had was cars are in the shop for too long because we're waiting for parts, right? So I'm the shop owner. So my shop floor is filled because I'm always waiting for new parts to come in, and I don't have my parts. Excellent. So that's a problem. What's the result? The result becomes we never wait for parts, or we almost never wait for parts. So the waiting time is down. And we just changed the amount of time a car stays in our shop from an average of 2 days to an average of 3 hours. Right? Okay. Now, the reason that that's so important is because you're going to go talk to a car repair shop. Not really, but you're going to go talk to a car repair shop. And what's the problem they're trying to solve? Well, do you have way too many cars that are just sitting around waiting for parts? Do you have too big of a space because you're waiting for parts? What if you could get that wait time from 2 days down to 3 hours? What would that do for you? Right. So what we're doing is not just getting to the value part. I love the value part, but we're walking there a step at a time so that we can communicate that value to our marketplace really clearly. Awesome. Very nice. Very nice. Let's do one more, and then I want to do something before I let you guys go, if that's okay. And by the way, I also need to answer Blake's question. One more.
I don't mind going.
Okay. Thanks, Haiti.
So we were looking at a problem where people are dying or experiencing significant health problems because care is delayed or unavailable due to the lack of supplies or blocked physical distribution channels. And so we see this technology as an opportunity for people to beam over medical devices, supplies, and medications, including like COVID vaccinations, or if we were able to beam things over like pieces of ventilators around, as a way to help people share. And so we see the ultimate like result of this is fundamentally saving people's lives, improving the morale of society, just like on a very high level with the pandemic, but that, long term, this also speaks to a lot of social justice concerns where we could reduce medical deserts by being able to make it easier to reach out to remote or impoverished communities that don't normally have access. Reducing the likelihood of supply interruptions like what you have with the distribution of the vaccinations because of the blizzards in the Midwest and in other parts of the US, and then allowing people to refocus their time and their energy on the medical crisis at hand in looking more at like how to create vaccinations instead of trying to solve distribution problems. So we had some trouble with figuring out like the specifics of the value. From the pandemic side, it's hard to place a value on saving your spouse's life or your child's life. But there are opportunities to look at pricing from the standpoint of what does it cost from a physical standpoint to transport goods and services around, the speed in which things need to get transported, like the vaccinations at certain temperatures. And so, we were looking at a variety of different ways of how we could do the pricing for the value. And, that's kind of where we ended.
Yep. So I love the altruistic viewpoint. The group I was in, they were doing organ transplants and trying to move that as well. And I thought it was kind of interesting, but here's the problem. And this is one of the things I love about the value table is in the end, we've got to figure out who's going to pay us money.
Yes.
Right. What's the dollar value? And so one of the reasons I was letting you just choose whatever use case you want is because then you could say, well, what's the problem we're going to solve?
Mhm.
What's the result we're going to achieve, and who's going to pay me money for that, right? Is there actually a dollar value? And we found that doctors didn't want to pay for organs, but maybe insurance companies would. And so you could restructure it all around insurance companies. And I think that's the same thing I would say with this example is great. I love it. I want to use it for this application, but someone's going to have to pay me money unless you just want to do it altruistically, which is totally okay. That's not my world.
Yeah, we were thinking it would be more the burden on the pharmaceutical companies when it came to that, or the equipment manufacturers, because then they could approach it in a different way where you could look at like shared programs of sharing equipment between different communities that can't pay for it completely on their own, or with pharmaceuticals, just the straight up the delivery costs, that this might be a quicker, cheaper way for them to distribute versus trucks, trains, et cetera.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And so that's a great way to do it, is just to say, look, are we lowering the cost of delivering this? So that could work really well. Okay. I have two last things I want to do real quickly before the 3 minutes are up that I have. First thing I want to do is share with you guys, I go here. Oh, quick, impactful insight. Few people understand their own value, and they had to work hard to learn it. And that's what we're seeing as we go through this exercise. When you do it for yourself, you're going to find that it's not trivial. But I wanted to make you guys a quick offer for what I can do. As I said, all I do is teach people and advise people. We put together a product management bundle of products with 3 key courses called Value-Based Business, Accelerate Your Subscription Business, and Price Segmentation. Each of those we normally charge $500 for. We bundled them for $1,000, but for you guys, we'll put it $750. And if you use promo code coffee, you get it for $750. And we're going to give $100 to the group product coffee if you want to do that. So it's really nice. But here's an offer that I've never, ever made before. I am in the middle of creating a course on Stiving value tables. So if you sign up for this, I'll give you access to that course too, when it's out. It'll be out in April. So it's totally up to you. To take advantage of it, you can get pmbundle.championsofvalue.com. And that's the last I'll talk about that. I want to make sure I answer Blake's question. Blake's question was on risk and how do you quantify risk? Now, it isn't our job to quantify risk. It's actually our client's job to quantify risk. And what typically they're doing is they're saying, what's the probability that something's going to happen? And what's the cost to me if that thing happens? In statistics, this is called, shoot, I'm a statistician. I can't remember what it's called. Expected value. There we go. This is called expected value. And so if you can convince someone that you're either going to lower the cost of what happens when it happens, or you're going to lower the probability of something happening, that lowers the expected value of that. And theoretically, the CFO or the person in your company who's looking at these things is thinking in these terms. So our job is to say, look, here's how we're going to lower your expected value by this much, whatever that happens to be. I hope that answered the question. No?
No, thanks, Mark. Appreciate it.
All right. Jason, I got 1 minute. I'm happy to stick around and answer questions if you're willing to keep it on, but totally up to you.
Glad to do it. We can stick around for a couple extra minutes and keep the lines open for a few more minutes. Yeah. And I want to thank everybody for coming. Next week, we will be back to our regular schedule at 7:30 a.m. Eastern on Wednesday morning. We're going to be doing a town hall on product management, career management, managing your product management career, thinking about getting into product management, accelerating your career path through product management, and kind of developing your opportunities as you go. Real roundtable type approach like we do at the beginning of our calls for kind of open floor.